Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. Allow me first to start with the land acknowledgement. Toronto is in the dish with one spoon territory. The dish with one spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent indigenous nation and people, European and all newcomer, have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. For those who doesn't know me, my name is Dr. Rima Saleh. I'm a Middle Eastern woman with a mid-tone skin tone, wearing a purple scarf and a black blouse. My background showing a blurry image of a school hall, and my pronunciation is she, her. I'm the associate professor at the graphic communication management at the Creative School at Toronto Metropolitan University, and I'm a proud instructor of the unique digital asset management course for the undergraduate level, and the founder director of the Lab of Excellence in Digital Asset Management. As the temperatures rise, making the beginning of warmer weather, at least in Toronto, vacation plans begin to take shape. Before booking flight, most of us automatically tend to explore destination and aspire to visit. The initial exploration often began with browsing through captured images and immersive video, enriching us to really investigate deeper into the charm of the place. However, behind the seamless flow of information lies the vital connection between tourism, destination marketing, and digital asset management. These elements meet as the tourism authorities and marketers curate and distribute attractive digital content to showcase the unique appeal of destination, thereby driving visitor interest and engagement. Today, we are going to dig deeply into the connection with our experts joining us from different parts of the world. Allow me first to go through some housekeeping. Please note that the workshop is recorded and the recording will be shared with everyone after the event. I am going to allow the closed captioning in a second, which you can view it by clicking on show caption icon in the meeting control toolbar at the bottom of your Zoom window. To make sure that we are focused on the event, your video and mic has been locked, and we would like to keep them all the time during the event. I will be moderating the chat, and there is a Q&A panel available for you to cast your question, and we will moderate that. So feel free to add your question at any time during the event. We are encouraging building community, so feel free also to post your LinkedIn profile link on the chat as well. With that, I would like to introduce my friend David Lipsey, a well-known expert in digital asset management technology and the masterhead behind so many DAM initiatives, including the launching of the LED Lab, who's going to moderate today's session. David, over to you.
Reem, thanks so very much. It's always a treat to be sharing the virtual stage with you and with our colleagues from around the world who work hard to put digital assets to work every day in service of their mission and the mandates of their organization. Digital asset management is reasonably well established in the travel and tourism industry. But as all of us have seen over the past 20 years of DAM's existence, the meaning of content continues to evolve and change within both the structure of that content as well as its intended impact and our measurement of how it goes to work every day around the world to help portray those areas that are represented by a particular travel or tourism operation or a convention and visitors bureau, whatever the case might be. There are so many changing meanings always within the fact that we are publishers, all of us, and the new meanings of the technology that we continually are responsible for evaluating, implementing, and safeguarding that with which we are entrusted. Whether that's immersive video, as Reem mentioned, whether it's the continued unfolding of various social media channels. Imagine if we had met 10 years ago and I had asked everybody on the webinar who is attending and presenting to please give their latest TikTok presentation. Would have been blank stares. And 10 years from now, there's something that right today would be a blank stare. We turn to our professionals to be ready to absorb this ever-changing landscape about what is a digital asset, where does metadata come from as we grapple with the impacts of AI and its various incarnations. Digital is sort of like that restless 4-year-old. It just doesn't like to stand still. So while DAM is in widespread use, that 4-year-old is still awfully restless. And we turn to professionals to have a perspective on how do we continually put digital assets to work in service of our mission and mandate. I've had the privilege of working with each of our 4 speakers today, and we're going to start with a presentation from our friend and colleague from Ireland, Lynette Conlon. Lynette, welcome. It's always such a treat to have the chance to have an excuse to be working with you over these past few weeks, and a joy to have you here today. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Just going to share my screen here.
And you're good.
Good. Okay. Well, good afternoon or good evening, everyone, depending on where you're connecting in today. So as David has introduced me, let's take the wee chat off here. Bear with me a wee second. So my name's Lynette and I work for Tourism Northern Ireland. So this is part of the Tri-Agency DAM programme, which I'm about to speak to you today. So my company, Tourism Northern Ireland, are responsible for the development of tourism, and they play a vital role in supporting the industry to promote Northern Ireland as a short break destination. So a little bit about myself. So currently I work with Tourism Northern Ireland and have been doing so for over 13 years now. So I work in change management and focusing on dynamics. But in the past 7 years, I've been working hard in the DAM space, should I say? And in the past 7 years, I've been working as a DAM manager, amongst other roles. In the past 7 years to manage a tri-agency DAM programme in which I've been working with our partners, Tourism Ireland and Fáilte Ireland, to promote the workflows and processes to ensure searchability. So let's take a step back for a moment in time to talk about the early days of DAM. So the preparations for DAM and the preparations for DAM and the rules about preservation for digital asset management actually started back in the early 20th century. Even metadata was, we had included metadata in many of our assets. So for Tourism Northern Ireland, we actually were established in 1948. These are a few of our sample images back in the 1950s, where you can see there was metadata had been applied at that point, although limited, but really at this point is where this is where DAM and digital assets and metadata would carve for the future, because this would prove to be valuable for the future down the line when digital asset management systems actually came to be implemented. But if we fast forward to the 1990s and early noughties, it was really when the physical element of photography was being phased out and it became digitized. We did in fact have our own photographic library back in from 1950 onwards, but this was the days of the darkened room where we would search for negatives, and that was before my time, but I'm sure it wasn't very organized, and I'm sure it wasn't an easy task. But now, at that point in the 1990s, the photography was being digitized. But even back in between 2009 to 2012, we were actually still using CD-ROMs and floppy disks to transfer high-res images to those that requested it. And despite our many efforts, it was quite difficult to ensure track and traceability. So it really didn't exist. So let's talk a bit about the early days of progression with DAM. So this is really when I was introduced into the DAM world in 2009, when I first started working as a part-time librarian, amongst other roles. And at that point, we did have an in-house built image library. Yes, there was internal access and there was some availability for image downloads, but it really wasn't self-servicing and it had a very basic search functionality. But it was really in 2015 when we started to look at procuring our own external DAM. And in fact, this first generation DAM that we had was quite futuristic of its time in terms of built-in metrics, enhanced end user journey with metadata structure and improved metadata application. However, our DAM requirements even then were evolving, and there were still some elements that were missing. So firstly, from an organizational point of view, there was still a lack of understanding of the value of DAM. In terms of functional, there was inconsistencies around standardization, there was limited integration and limited sharing efficiencies. So this is when we want to start to talk about what our evolving DAM requirements were and where we really seeing this going. So it was at this point when the conversation started to happen, and as my role started to evolve, as did our DAM requirements. It soon became apparent that TNI, ourselves and our partners in Fáilte Ireland and Tourism Ireland were following similar paths, sharing a lot of the same common goals in supporting industry to help them reach wider audiences from a content perspective. There was a great desire to share content more efficiently in the global arena, as well as progressing our DAM maturity model in our talent, technology, and strategic alignment. And some of these requirements that you see in this slide today were these were requirements that we were aligning to our partners. And really this collaboration would prove to be a fantastic opportunity in which we could join forces to work to achieve these DAM aspirations. So the DAM initiative. So after many meetings in Dublin and Belfast with many cups of tea and sandwiches, in 2018, we embraced our giant spirit and formed as a tri-agency DAM team. So what does this look like visually? So we've 3 agencies, 3 tourism public sector agencies are sharing one back-end system. We're ensuring collaboration and aligned workflows and sharing efficiencies. But we also, in addition to that, we have the luxury of our own branded portals. The reason why we have this is so that we can ensure management control, we can promote our own brands and ensure digital rights management, along with all signing up to a memorandum of understanding, an interagency agreement, if you like, which sets out our roles and responsibilities. So what are the key benefits of this tri-agency program? So firstly, let's focus in on the tri-agency vision. And this is to promote enhanced discovery of our inspirational content through one single source of truth. And for those that are new to DAM, what this means is that your users will get access to that one true version of those assets. And we are doing this through alignment with brand messaging, which are all housed in one centralized environment. And by doing that, we're preserving the asset lifecycle through content repurposing, reducing our carbon footprint. We're ensuring digital rights management by applying specific sets of metadata, and that allows us to actually ensure track and traceability and also streamline our workflows. So let's take a look at some of those key developments in that we've been able to achieve as a tri-agency DAM program. So the third-party uploader tool, this is an add-on to the public portal of the DAM system, led by Fáilte Ireland, whereby third parties can upload their own content when they go through a strict approvals quality checking process. And to date, there has been over 25,000 uploads. The Adobe Bridge integration piece. So as part of future-proofing workflows and metadata assurance upon asset export, we have implemented an integration with our metadata schema and Adobe Bridge software via an API. There's also a marketing toolbox. This was led again by Fáilte Ireland, which provides access to many different types of marking collateral in a user-friendly space, which we're hoping to become more integrated. And lastly, digital rights management. So digital rights management was not an add-on. This was something that was already embedded into our current DAM. And this enables accountability in our usage rights and the processing of personal data. And so there are a number of ways in which our DAM enables us to do this. But we will continue to work to enhance this as the processing of personal data evolves. So we have many accomplishments, I would say, and proud moments. But so let's just take a look at a few of those. So we've in 2022, we became the very proud recipients of the 2022 Media Management Award. And this award honours organisations that demonstrates innovation, provides impactful solutions to help others get the full value out of their digital assets. We have also made history in making an Irish tourism as a tri-agency collaboration in DAM, which has never been done before. We have combined 3 different taxonomies into one, a structured hierarchical taxonomy that is fit for purpose. We have implemented best practices in education and training, including a one-stop shop online hub for both the industry and staff. So it's now become a self-servicing platform, and we ensure to collaborate on as many commissions as we can, which again saves cost, reduces carbon footprint, and helps to strengthen our relations with one another. So let's take a look at some of the wonderful content that may inspire you to visit the island of Ireland. Firstly, let's take a look at Northern Ireland. So as you can see, Giant's Causeway, it's over 60 million years old, but still one of the most popular and most captivated attractions today as it was back in the early 20th century. And in complete contrast, we've got the Belfast Cathedral Quarter. This is a lovely picture of night with the lovely umbrellas. And this is located right in the heart of the city centre Cathedral Quarter with lovely cobbled streets, and it's really a central hub of all things art, cultural and nightlife. And also, I'm sure everyone knows here about the Derry Girls. If you don't, you do now. Northern Ireland is fast becoming one of the many places for screen tourism, such as the award-winning Derry Girls, Game of Thrones, The Fall, and the most recent series that's on at the moment is Blue Lights. So I just wanted to highlight one of the most successful product stories in Northern Ireland. That is our Glenshane Farm at Londonderry. So as you may be aware, we have a new brand called Embrace the Giant Spirit. Well, it was actually established in 2019. And Jamesy started off as a 5th generation sheep farmer. And over the past 2 years, with support from Tourism NI, along with other authorities, both from a marketing and a funding perspective, Jamesy and his family have reaped the benefits of his due diligence and hard work, and now operates a successful farming touring business, providing visitors with an insight into his farm life with his sheepdogs at work as an Embrace the Giant Spirit experience. So these are some of the assets which Fáilte Ireland, Tourism Ireland have provided. And so part of the reason why we work so well together as tri-agency is that each partners bring added value to the DAM with many different types of content, from immersive experiences to breathtaking drone content, mixed in with a bit of Irish traditional landmarks. And this is ideal for different marketing campaigns. It's fair to say there has been a increase in demand for different types of asset types for the likes of Instagram, different types of social media, as well as aerial and drone content. And by working together, we can achieve that. So let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we had to overcome. So taxonomy alignment, as I kind of mentioned that before, this was something that we implemented way at the beginning. That would be my advice to anyone creating a DAM, is to look at your metadata schema and your taxonomy. And for us, it was important that we were able to identify commonalities and duplicate removal and identify priorities. User access control. So taking lessons learned from before, we have applied a simple yet effective approach in terms of management control. As you can see from our model that we have designed, it's really well structured, set out permissions management, and is used as part of education to our users. There's also organizational culture change. So it was really important that we could bring our our users on the journey, on their DAM journey. So that included education and training, user engagement, and open communications, as well as complex reporting. As a tri-agency, it was important that we were able to identify our reporting requirements and make sure that was aligned. And that is something that we're focusing on developing. Asset findability, also really important as part of the DAM. So it's really important that we hear the users and implement advanced search filters to help them find what they need, as well as resourcing. As we all know, resourcing in DAM can be quite challenging. So it's really important that you put contingency plans in place, and we were able to leverage the coalition of the willing, if you like, to help them become DAM champions. So what's next for us in the tri-agency DAM? So see here are some of the future goals and aspirations that we want to work towards. We want to continue to focus on the customer and enhance the end user journey according to the user engagement and feedback. We want to progress system integration, such as, and we have started this process, but we want to work to develop this in the future. CMS, creative suites, or media room. And we also want to complete the move away from the silo culture. Whilst our new DAM has enabled us to start doing that, it's very much an organizational thing. So we want to be able to work with other teams to help us do that. And that includes AR and VR. We want to enhance our reporting requirements, ensure full transparency in our digital rights management. But finally, we'd like to tap into the possibilities and exploring the ethics around AI. I mean, it's something that is talked about a lot in the world today, and there's lots of possibilities, but we want to make sure that those AI possibilities are what's right for us. So thank you, everyone. That's the end of my presentation.
Lynette, thanks so much. It's always such a treat for me to get an update on what you've been working on and what the Tri-State Agency is doing. Sometimes I think the letters AI stand for ambiguously innovative.
Yes.
Other times I think it stands for absurd inanity. And at some point, we'll know what it actually stands for. I was wondering, do you have a couple of experiences where someone either in management or in and among the tri-agencies have come to you or to the team with an AI centric initiative or something saying, would you please test this out and see if it works? Anything that you can share that's come along so far?
Oh, but I don't think we're quite at that stage yet. But from in terms of DAM, but in terms of from an organizational point of view, there's definitely a lot of discussions around that. And we've had companies come in to kind of sell AI and what it can do in terms of there's like a co-pilot that has been embedded into our dynamics. But certainly it's something we're talking about in the DAM world. We've talked about even the past couple of years ourselves in terms of what we wanted to do. It's just a wee bit difficult for us because, or for anyone working in tourism, because we want to be able to customize AI to help us find what we need. And there's many different examples. There's the natural language where it's an example of where it understands human language and then helps to avoid human error. There's also deep learning, and that facilitates more precise tagging. And I think for us, for our taxonomy, we want to be able to make use of AI, but we want it to be fit for purpose. And so there's obviously a cost and resourcing things that we need to consider if we want to customize our metadata to enable us to make sure that it is efficient and it actually doesn't have a negative impact. So it's definitely something we want to work towards.
And it'll be, I think I'd like to just call out that phrase that you said of cost and resourcing. One of the things that I think it's so important that the DAM professionals who work with content objects harness the upper management attention to be sure that there's time devoted to laboratory work, AI does not arrive in a vacuum. AI is not just add water and the dinosaur sponge pops up into a dinosaur.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's important to be sure to advocate for that.
Yeah, it takes a lot of resourcing to, progress it and make sure that that it does work for you. It has to learn. That's why it's called machine learning, I guess. It has to learn to know what it is that you want to do with
Yeah.
it. So it'll take a wee bit of tweaking around that, but definitely for the future, I hope.
It'll be a shape changer, but it will come along. And
Yeah.
some of it will always be like, as we'll hear later, like the Loch Ness monster, and you'll keep looking for it. And a lot of people will be around the lakeside, and it'll be a big tourist attraction. But what is it really? Anyways,
Yeah.
we had a thoughtful question come in. Thank you. What would you say your biggest challenge and obstacles are in achieving your future goals in travel and tourism?
Um, I think for as a public sector organization, and I don't want to talk about costs again, but I'm going to talk about costs. And I think that
Yeah.
has it's just been a big factor. And we're not the only organization that has been negatively impacted by that. But we have leveraged what resources what we have, and that's when we talk about when I talked about repurposing content and actually liaising with the business, liaising with the industry, to help leverage those assets in a more a better way that shows that we're spending money wisely. And so rather than going out and commissioning new pieces of content, it's about working with the business, helping them to achieve what they need to, but it's also about uh, leveraging the wider marketing teams to work through all of that and look for opportunities where we can reduce our costs, but we're still getting out there. We're still promoting Northern Ireland, the island of Ireland, to the wider industry. And I think that's just about working as a team together, lots of open communications, and really getting out in there and speaking to the industry.
I think along that journey, and partially in answer to that question, one of the things that almost every professional involved in digital asset management has been asked to do is to answer the question, well, what's the return on this investment? And it can become feeling a little harsh sometimes. It can become feeling a little trite sometimes. But good counsel, I believe, is to continually journal when a bit of savings or a bit of impact on mission and mandate, another way of looking at ROI, occurs. So if there is that reaching out to colleagues, as you said, Lynette, or we were able to have cost savings because we found the assets we need, and to continually have those insights available to us in our governance meetings helps us to continually resource the restless child and to be able to express out the savings that DAM continually represents. So Lynette, thank you so much for your presentation, and you'll be joining us in a little later when we convene as a panel.
Yeah, sure. Thanks everybody for listening.
I think they did that just okay.
Thanks.
You bet. So, Andrew, we have you up next. Your blend of a large organizational background brings a terrific perspective to the overall context of this sector. Really enjoyed getting to see this from your perspective over these past few weeks. Thanks for putting some thoughts together, and over to you to introduce yourself and take the stage.
Thank you so much, David. I hope everyone can hear me all right. My name is Andrew Segward. I'm the president and CEO of Tourism Industry Association of Ontario. So we are a provincial advocacy-based organization, and our mandate is to ensure the economic prosperity of the tourism sector. The work of TAIO and our community partners takes place on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, Cree, and Haudenosaunee, and we're privileged to work on these lands and benefit from the those who come before us and continue to steward the land. Thanks for inviting me today. I am going to, it's great to follow such a great presentation prior because it's very, very focused on the technical aspects and best practices in DAM. And what I'm going to talk a little bit about are some of the building blocks that I see around good digital asset management strategies, as well as some thinking on some emerging technologies as well. I think though, when the great question that was just posed around return on investment. So to me, one of the things that I see that's critical is that the options around us are growing every day. There's so many channels and so many places for us to get our message out. And I think we all as marketers know that it's growing exponentially. And at the same time, our resources are and talent are more challenging and in short supply. I mean, we have labor shortages in every sector, but particularly in our tourism context. And so it means that for us, we need to be thinking about efficiencies and innovation. And so to me, that is, the largest ROI. And so you get there from a productivity perspective with good process and good investments. What I'm going to share is just some building blocks, and I would say, foundational elements that folks need to be thinking about when strengthening their digital asset management strategies. So for me, it's priority number one is making sure that you're building a digital first team, and that your teams have the skills and the capability to work in this space. And I think sometimes we find many folks enter into our organizations tackling these issues, but they don't quite have the background or the expertise, and therefore they need that help. So either finding those folks who have it or working with learning institutions like TMU to ensure that your teams can learn as they go is critically important. One of the things that I still see in this space is not enough focus on intent and more focus on the asset. And so I think that is something that we have to be thinking about. I still see marketers talking too much about the asset before they talk about the channel, before they talk about the intent. And I feel like we almost need to reverse that. There's a bit of a sense that DAM initiatives deliver a promise of endless options with a well-organized asset bank. And I think we often feel that it gives us that flexibility to go where we may need to go. But one of the things that I'm seeing and a need that I'm seeing is for organizations to think a bit more about compression and focus for effectiveness. And then I think if you've got that philosophy in place, it actually allows you to better utilize the DAM. So if I think about just one example of social media channels, we're seeing such a growth in social, and I see a lot of marketing teams struggling and spreading themselves too thin to be in all of these places. And so if that's where our starting point is, then it's going to influence the digital asset management plan. One of the things that we're doing here at TIO is we're narrowing our focus on which social channels we need to play in. And as a result, it's going to allow us to focus on the unique attributes of those channels, and then it can allow more focus in our DAM efforts. So I think that's something really important. A lot of young people will look at a channel like X and say, that's not cool anymore. It's not where the marketing space is. But when you look at the metrics, particularly for an organization like ours, it's a channel that's critically important. And so we want to make sure that we are creating assets that can help that channel thrive for us, as an example. And every organization is different. But the idea on focus is, I think, critically important. And so sometimes the DAM strategy can leave us feeling like we have endless opportunities, therefore we have to secure endless assets. And I think that the next gen is looking at more focus. Metrics and reporting is a key aspect of these strategies to allow more focus. And we're seeing things like internal dashboards, of course, being critical, but also more external dashboards and partnerships. So when I was with a destination marketing organization prior to joining TIO, we worked with a really interesting platform called Zartico, which allowed us to get a lot of information on the ground on geographic zones using mobile data, capturing demographic insights. And we spent a lot of time bringing those that information into our dam to help guide strategy on a go-forward basis. So I think there's going to be more need there. And then something that the prior presenter talked a lot about is partnerships and collaboration and how important they are to grow. And you could see the ROI in the prior presenter, where the more you work with others, the better your reach can be. We're working on a project here on digital assets, but it's data and economic data. We're working with a number of regional tourism organizations across the province, and we're creating a common data model, and then capturing that data model and then including it in our respective organizations' digital banks so that we can be more effective going forward. And I think, you know, digital assets are information as well as marketing assets, and that's something that we can get better when we're collaborating. So those are just a few kind of top line trend lines that I'm seeing. As it relates to some of the technologies, just want to share a few comments and examples. So the last question around AI, are there examples of AI being implemented? You know, when I was working at a DMO recently, we created a really interesting product using learning language models and artificial intelligence to create a guest-facing question and answer service. It was all text-based, but the idea was the system would read all of our web assets, and customers could go there to text a question and to get directed. And what was so brilliant about that model, at the end of the day, it was a service, an operational need, but the insights that were coming from that operational need were helping on marketing and helping advise us on where signage needed to be, etc. So, you know, one of my pieces of advice is AI can be leveraged for operational needs, but then the insights can be further integrated into asset development and planning. So that was a really great initiative, and one that I think I wanted to share, and I can always expand upon that. The other thing that I just want to highlight from a tech perspective is that and at the asset perspective, a lot of interactivity is what I'm seeing is really inspiring and engaging, but it can't be novel. And there are some areas where I'm seeing VR being used just for the sake of VR, and I feel like in some respects that works against our efforts because it turns off consumers. So I think, you know, any digital assets have to be done with purpose and intent. And then lastly, I've seen a lot of success in leveraging user-generated content, having worked closely with a platform like CrowdRiff, and I know we've got a speaker to talk a little bit more about that. But when we can engage consumers and customers in creating digital assets and sharing them with us, and the authenticity that comes from that has been very strong. And then leveraging those platforms which have a DAM feature and function really unlock creative marketing. So those are just some of the insights that I wanted to share, and I'm happy to discuss further with you, David, or take any questions.
Andrew, thanks so much. Or I'm sorry. Thanks so much for for a great overview and contextualizing some of the issues. A few years ago, I had a chance to attend a session where the former CIO of Gartner spoke. His name is Douglas Laney.
Mm-hmm.
He had written a book that was profoundly impactful on me, and it led to my giving a lot of presentation on what I call ROI cubed.
Mm-hmm.
And I only snuck two of them in after listening with Lynette. Traditional return on investment, we don't commission the same image twice. Okay. And then return on impact.
Yeah.
How does our mission and mandate reflect the work? How does our work reflect its tie to mission and mandate of a particular organization? It's extremely important for those entities that measure themselves by services rendered, as is our intent today. It's also useful in the corporate and private sector, but has some different semantics to it. But for governmental operations, not-for-profits, charities. And Douglas Laney wrote this book called Infonomics.
Mm.
And it's about the value of information. So I wanted to just call out and kind of draw the yellow line, the yellow marker, I'm sorry, and highlight that very pivotal insight. Dam systems and other systems contain immense amounts of data. One of the key things, and it was so thoughtful of you to highlight this, is that we can't, not we can't, let's stop leaving data on the table.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's put it to work, and to do it in a cross-cutting entity. Wonder if you could just unpack a little bit more about that, like how that project got started, what some of your hopes are for it.
Well, one of the things we started to realize was that a lot of players in the space understood that they needed more data, but we're having a hard time understanding what data points really mattered. And it depended on who you talked to, what they were. And of course, when you have, let's say, members of a team across a large geography, when you go off into different directions, sometimes you end up creating data sets that are a little too disparate. So the idea here is if we can create a data model where we're all aligned on the key data elements, and then we work to capture that data together, it will unpack the power of being able to compare, to analyze, and to deliver some consistency. So on the ground, marketers are going to be able to better understand what visitor traffic is like, what consumer expectation or experience is, but then they can compare with their colleagues across regions. And then for a larger partner who is looking at the broader provincial picture, such as Tile, our ability to roll up all that data into some broader insights to help us on our advocacy work is really compelling. And what happens over time is the data sets become more credible, and we start to all speak from the same data model perspective, and it just helps us all improve. And so, working on that from a common platform helps drive capacity. We have partners who have deep knowledge on data and analysis, and some that don't. So the best part is that it's going to help us create and equalize and a level playing field on knowledge. And then when all those insights are close to the marketing assets or tools or strategy, I think it's going to deliver a much more powerful outcome and help Ontario compete against its market competitors across the country and globally. So it's a really interesting, innovative piece, and it looks at things like, subsectoral performance, restaurants, hotels, attractions. It looks at economic performance. It looks at business viability. And then critically, it looks at workforce capability and what's the workforce in all of these geographies. So that's the idea, but it's not necessarily an asset model to market. It's an asset model to understand. And then it layers on top of that marketing piece. So I think that's a layer that we're working on, which I think is pretty exciting.
I think so too. And when we come back as a group after our next couple of presentations, this raises really interesting issues to me as an industry leader about, okay, where does DAM report to?
Yeah.
How do we understand that the table that we sit at today, it's not the table that Lynette so eloquently presented in what was the situation and the arc of evolution of content liquidity and object liquidity, and now starting to refactor questions. We see this, of course, if we had our colleagues here from where I am in Washington, D.C., right down the street from the world headquarters of Hilton and Marriott, who are just almost neighbors, their efforts on to understand customer journey and twin up to data insights that are sector generated, as we're talking about, what is a fascinating conversation. I'm sure that's part of what's going on there. So
sure. And to me, it's that fusion of like marketers. Marketers always need to start from the perspective of intent. What are we trying to achieve? And I find sometimes that if you aren't factoring in inputs from your operation, you're missing some of that. So any of these tools that you can integrate with your operations to get that intel coming in, I think helps you be a better marketer.
Very nice. Yeah, and I think so critical in the trend line of the MarTech sector today.
Yeah.
That there's a continuum here in the content supply chain, and your insights help to look at what governs, where we put the pipelines.
Yeah.
We can get them connected today, but where do we put them?
Mhm.
So on that note, Andrew, thanks so much.
Thank you.
I'll see you again in a few minutes, and I'm going to ask our colleague from Great Britain to join us, Julian.
Hi, David.
And I'll go back to the left-hand side of the road here. So
Okay, thank you. So just share my screen.
and you're good.
Great, thank you. Yes, so my name's Julian Weigel. I joined Visit Britain as the dam manager in August 22. I've got about 14 years experience in the dam and creative production sector across heritage, charity and visitor attraction sector. So I'm always interested in that asset workflow from beginning to end. And I'm going to give you a quick run through today of the Visit Britain Dam journey over the last couple of years since the site was launched in April 22 and what's changed since then. So yeah, first a bit of background about Visit Britain. We were launched in 2003 from the merger of the British Tourist Authority and the British Tourism Council. And as the National Tourism Agency, we're responsible for marketing Britain overseas. And we work with partners in the UK and abroad to ensure that Britain's marketed in an inspirational and relevant way. And we're really positioning Britain as a dynamic and exciting destination. So offering diverse experiences and culture, which you can kind of see from the images there on the right. And we're really prioritising travel to the whole of the UK and across the seasons too. And then separately, we promote England, both overseas and at home, as a tourist destination under the Visit England brand. So a quick bit about the asset library. So our asset library contains a mix of licensed and commissioned images and video, and it really serves two roles. So one is as an external resource to the travel industry and our partners, giving them a pool of free to download assets and images for the promotion of Britain as a tourism destination. And secondly, we serve our 200 staff users across 21 markets. And those staff work closely with the local travel trade and media, as well as diplomatic and cultural staff from the British government to kind of build that interest. So the highlighted areas on the map there are where our users come from, and we're ever growing that base over time. So it's a real global footprint and kind of shows how the British Tourist Authority is a real partnership organisation, and it's got that in its DNA. So a bit of background to the dam project. So there's a picture there of Land's End, which is the symbolic start of the UK. I think if you're from England, or John O'Groats if you're in Scotland. But yeah, the Visit Britain Asset Library was actually previously known as Visit Britain Images, which was an outsourced picture library, and that was fully outsourced and managed by a company who also provided the dam platform. And then as part of a wider digital transformation program at BTA, and the decision was made to bring the dam in-house and relaunch it as the Visit Britain Asset Library in April 22. And it was launched by a project team, and then I joined in the summer to lead the program, and we hired a digital asset executive in the autumn. So the main reasons for bringing it in-house were greater brand consistency, so have a much tighter, more focused control over the look and feel of assets. And it was a sort of maybe 5,000 assets we launched with, so a really tightly curated set, which was designed to showcase our best assets and align it with our new visual principles. And then more control over assets, so to mitigate the risk of rights infringement. So when it was launched, part of the launch involved a DAM CMS integration. So all our images on the website now have to be pulled from our DAM to mitigate the risk of misuse. Another reason, more efficient asset workflows. So the previous process of uploading to the outsourced DAM wasn't efficient. So bringing it in-house enables us to speed up the publishing timelines. And then, yeah, finally integration. So as part of the wider digital transformation, it enables us to look to do future integrations across our digital products and have access to a level of data insight, which we didn't have before. So when I joined the Asset Library, there wasn't really much institutional experience or background with DAM, as it had been outsourced, and there was little in the way of customization or taxonomy, and new processes and governance need to be put in place. So when I joined, I kind of wanted to focus on refreshing the system and getting some solid foundations in place. So I'm going to quickly run through how we approached that and the areas we decided to prioritize. So yeah, the first element was really understanding our users' experience of the system and speaking to stakeholders, understanding the pain points and issues and validating the use cases. So it's particularly useful speaking to our country managers here who work cross channels and both internally and externally, and kind of understanding the complexities of the issues they had. And then we took that feedback into our user survey, which we sent out to internal and external users to understand how they approach search and the pain points and issues they had. Thirdly, we reviewed the metadata, so the quality of the migrated metadata to see what needed cleansing and updating. And then finally, looking at our search reports to see the content people had been looking for since launch, and then the search success they'd had to date. So from that discovery, we decided to prioritize 3 areas. The first of which was metadata. So our discovery phase indicated users had been struggling to find what they needed or taking several searches to get their results. So we obviously had to try and move to get more consistent, accurate, and easy retrieval of those assets, and also meet the search needs of our external and internal users, which can vary a bit. So we took that insight from the surveys and analysis of the user search to build a new taxonomy and controlled list of category filters, some of which you can see there on the right-hand side. And then on top of that, we've layered it with a controlled list of keywords. So the legacy assets that came in had a lot of legacy keywords, which was creating noise with the search. So we've really focused that down to a core list of around 150, which meets most of our core search needs. And then the third key element is location. So that is the dominant search term that users make when they're using the system. And there were variations in our legacy metadata because it come from various sources. So we revalidated that location and data against the index of UK place names, which is a formal list the Office for National Statistics provide. Enabled us to have consistent location metadata across that. And then we retagged and recategorized all our live assets, so they were consistent to the new standards, and then updated our metadata schema. So reviewing the long list of fields that come in, removing redundant ones and adding in new ones, which we thought would be useful going forward. And the second area we focused on is curation. So when the site was launched, it was only the one portal for external and internal users, and it was clear that we needed separate ones for each so we could best surface content for those different user groups. So for external users, for example, there was a particular interest in popular UK cities, national park, food and drink, themes like that. And we wanted to make that assets easily accessible so they can quickly find it. Whereas our internal users is often more of a focus around our storytelling themes or experiential content. And then a second key area for us was anticipating upcoming needs. So the picture you see there is of the Beatles sculpture in Liverpool, and we hosted the Eurovision Song Contest last year. So there was a sudden spike of requests for that, and yeah, it's our second most downloaded asset since we launched the Asset Library, which is quite surprising, but it reflects the need. You've got to anticipate what people might want coming up and make sure you've got the content to provide that. And then thirdly, the importance of keeping up with search trends because they're ever evolving. So sustainability or wellness are recent themes. And you want to keep on top of that in terms of your keywording and the way you share that through collections. So that was what our homepage portal looked like when we launched. And this is what it's like now, externally facing. So it's more consistent with the rest of our digital estate. So the final area, which is a real big one for us, is around asset sourcing. So as I mentioned, the asset library holds a mix of licensed assets and also commissioned content. And when I joined the team, that sourcing was devolved to individual teams around the world. And that self-service model resulted in challenges in terms of the quality of metadata and the asset rights compliance. So assets would come to the DAM team and might be missing documentation or core metadata, which created delays and back and forth in terms of getting those assets live. So to address that, we've recently introduced a new central asset desk that's going to manage that asset sourcing going forward, strategically fill the content gaps that we've identified from our user base or search, and really embed our asset rights compliance. So for us as a government organisation, legal compliance is absolutely paramount. We get audited on this and we have to prove we've got a trail all the way back. So having this central desk that can, has that best practice and knowledge around shoot planning and licensing means that we can be confident in the assets they're sourcing and there's clear ownership there. And then also in terms of the due diligence side, it's making sure that that team takes ownership of the checking of the rights and the metadata before they're supplied to our DAM exec to do the final publish. So having that clear separation and those new processes is a key part for us of ensuring there's good DAM governance going forward. So what's down the road for us? So data is a big one. So we're working on a project to pull the raw data from the DAM into a central VB analytics dashboard, which is called Viewpoint. And now we'll be looking to combine that with data from our other digital platforms. So trying to break down the silos and have that overview for our teams of what's happening on a live basis. The second big one, we'll be looking to acquire a project management tool. So keen to integrate that with the DAM so we can streamline our workflows further and embed that metadata further upstream where possible. And then, AI is obviously, we're looking at that. So just one thing within that we're looking at is our alt text. So as a government body, we have to be compliant to AA accessibility standards. So we're working with a digital team to see if we can generate AI alt text for our assets. So those are a few of the things, and that's it from me.
Great. All right. Thanks so much, Julian, for putting that together and sharing those thoughts with us. As the operations evolved and changed over the years, came in-house, and the kind of the current state of the projects you've just been working on and you are working on, how does the word get out to your clientele, your constituency, to upper management? What are some of the lessons learned around externalizing the knowledge of what you're working so hard to do internally?
It's a very good question. So we have a sort of regularly quarterly meeting, which is called Building Our Future, where we report on the digital transformation project, and that's for the whole of the organisation to attend. So we're giving regular updates at that session as kind of part of the wider change management piece around changing people's understanding of digital change within the wider project. So that's been a really useful platform for us to kind of share that insight and build the knowledge. I think beyond that, I mean, we have regular newsletters going out. VB does like a lot of meetings, so we take any opportunity. And I think just celebrating those wins in terms of, keeping that visibility, people people need to understand why the dam is important across the organization. You know, and we do very diverse things. So I think for us, it's showing that, you know, users may have a very specific need, but we need to show how, you know, the dam has its tentacles in everything. And in terms of the kind of, I guess, the reporting side, so we are, as I say, externally facing. So the ROI element, you know, we report on number of downloads by industry and the kind of financial value of that. So it's interesting in terms of that kind of dual focus, in terms of there's sort of two audiences there that we're addressing in terms of our communications.
Great, thanks for that. Reem, I think you had a question.
Yeah, I do have a question. Julian, you mentioned about the use of the next thing is about the implementing of AI for alt text generation, which is alternative text for images. I was wondering what was the motivation on the decision of going to into AI tool for alt text as opposed to human factor, and whether that is going to affect like, if you go into AI, are you actually going to neglect the human factor or not?
Yeah, I mean, for us, I think it's a resource and cost thing. So manually doing that, we just don't really have the resource going forward. And also, as part of our, I think, the wider website, we have an estate that's in multiple languages. So we're looking at, you know, auto translation of the text on our websites as well for our alt text there. So it's just the resource constraint. You know, we're looking for AI, you know, those opportunities in AI to really kind of take the burden off where we don't have that resource. So I think because we are, you know, as a government body, quite constrained, we're seeing AI through that lens of, you know, where can it kind of cut down on our workload, do things that we can, you know, then focus on the other things which we need to prioritize.
Thank you for that. I'd encourage you to journal your insights at all steps for all of us involved in this, but in the projects that you just outlined, as well as to try to quantify them when you can. These will all be important conversations 18 months from now, 24 months from now, if we can work towards quantifying them. So I'd like to thank you so much for your presentation, and we will see you back here on stage in just a few short minutes.
Thanks, David.
You bet. Hannah, you're up next. It's been such a delight working with you and learning about your deeply grounded background in putting content to work, and now your continued background in putting content to work, but from a slightly different perspective. The end goal being discovery, usage, and a little joy in finding things. Over to you. Thanks for your time in putting this together.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Reem, for having me, as well as all the panelists and everyone that joined us today. I've really been enjoying the chat. I think, Julian, if you could do Diaries of Dam in the future, we'll all read that and stay on top of things. But good morning. My name is Hannah Grant. I'm the Director of Demand Generation and Growth at CrowdRiff, which is a tool I'll tell you about in a few slides that Andrew mentioned earlier. We'll talk about kind of what we do, but before we do that, I'll hop into a little bit about me. I'm joining you today from Nanaimo on Vancouver Island, so the far west coast of Canada, and the traditional territory of the Shunima people. So I'm really grateful to live and work and play here in this incredible space surrounded by the ocean. So let's take a look through. Let's see if I'm going to be able to slide. Yeah. So a bit about me. I am just a big old nerd, a marketer. I've got background in search engine optimization, content production, digital strategy. And before I joined the CrowdRiff team, I was the director of digital strategy at Tourism Vancouver Island, which is a regional DMO, like I said, on the west coast of Canada. And a lot of my work centered around working closely with local industry, in particular around digital literacy, did a lot of different training programs with them, as well as in the responsible travel and sustainability spaces. And I think probably my most proud piece of work was right as the tail end, my last year at the DMO, I led and spearheaded the Vancouver Island Accessible Travel Guides. So I worked with a group of disabled creatives to produce content to encourage travel for people living with disabilities. And it was, yeah, like I said, my most proud project. I love it to bits and pieces. And it really intersected content curation and collection, model releases, dam management, all of those different things. It was just one example of kind of the nitty gritty from end to end of a marketing content project. It's really cool. If you want to check out the video, big fan, I'll send it to you. And I continue my disability advocacy work today through different public speaking engagements or different support through DMOs in my role. But I'll tell you a little bit about what DAM and the kind of the journey of DAM was like for me at the DMO before I joined the CrowdRiff team. So really, the way that I got involved with DAM when I joined Tourism Vancouver Island in 2017 was being kind of the de facto tech savvy one. So Andrew mentioned about hiring for digital first, and I was really kind of one of the most enthusiastic team members to join the DMO at that time, and the one that was willing to try things that were way outside of my job description. So I was hired as an SEO specialist and as a social media coordinator, but really quickly took on some interesting projects that were way outside of like I probably had no business actually doing, but ended up really serving me because I was willing to just learn about all of these different projects and considerations. So I put kind of my agency hat on, which I had before I joined the DMO, and took to just lots of problem solving for my new client, which was the DMO in-house. So the first one was quite interesting, and it was a server migration. So you know, maybe we were a little late to the game to migrate to the cloud in only 2017, but I volunteered to handle that process and move us from an on-site server to a Google Workspace. And this was really kind of the first time that the team, who were really eager to get into the digital landscape and kind of modernize all of their practices, it was the first time that we had that level of collaboration and that ability to really, you know, like work on the same document together or share assets in a way that was much faster than accessing the server. It was also the first time that we were able to work from home because we didn't have to do, you know, like I don't even remember what it's called now. It's not a VPN, but like access kind of a remote workspace from home. We could just log into the cloud. So it kind of unlocked this whole sense of collaboration and sense of like team-wide ownership of maintaining this space. And it was also probably the hardest project I ever had around change management, because it was such a radical adjustment to workflows for the team on site to no longer access the folders in the way that they had set them up in the server, and to agree to a common set of best practices in this Google Workspace of how we would label folders, how we would label files, where we would store things. And to this day, the My Drive section of Google Workspace, where people can't access, continues to be the bane of my existence. But you know, it was a really great project to just get to know the team, sink my teeth into something like this, and understand how to kind of bring people into the fold in something like this. So that also meant that we were moving things off of CD-ROMs, we were moving things off of hard drives, and actually we still had an on-site like kind of mini archive of film negatives that we weren't really sure what to do with, as well as some like really massive hard drives that we stored in big Pelican cases. So it was really across the spectrum of sort of tech maturity that we were at, where we had resources from across the decades. The DMO was established in the 60s, so there was a lot of legacy assets that we had available to us that we weren't really sure how to manage. And in my role as a social media manager, I also had to make sure that I was populating all of our channels. I loved what Andrew said about really being focused on which channels we were active on. And at that time, it was early days of Instagram. We had maybe 1,000 followers. I had to convince the team when I joined that I'll never forget, someone said to me, they're no longer at the organization, but they said, I don't believe that social media will make cash registers ring. And it was one of those moments where you say something before you realize what you're saying. And I just said, I'd be happy to prove you wrong. And I did. And social became, you know, what it is today and what we know it as. But the pain point there was always having enough content to do the job. And so at the time I was consistently scouring through our @mentions on Instagram. I was looking through location tags. I was pleading stakeholders to send me visuals that they had, because of course they wanted to be featured on our social channels, but I didn't have any way to do that without content. And so it was a consistent manual workflow of, I'm sure if anybody walked by, they would be like, Hannah, are you working? You're just scrolling Instagram. But I was looking and curating and trying to collect content that would serve our businesses, especially our small kind of like mom and pop shop owned hoteliers and restaurateurs. So what kind of really changed for me and made a huge difference in my workflow was, I'd say about like late 2017, early 18, we adopted CrowdRiff as part of a provincial-wide strategy. So we were so grateful to our partners at Destination BC and Destination British Columbia for introducing us to the platform. And it really alleviated a lot of my challenges with sourcing. I'll show you in a few slides sort of how CrowdRiff functions. But it's a user-generated content platform that allows destinations to source visuals directly from travelers that are experiencing a destination. And this just changed everything for me. Suddenly, I no longer had to take screenshots from a DM with a photographer where I would ask for permission to use their photo. I could go through a workflow, and I felt like I was unlocked to actually think about more strategy behind the visuals I was using, as opposed to just finding them. You know, one project we worked on in concert with British Columbia Parks, which is our provincial park arm, was a dispersion strategy. So it was, how do we encourage user-generated content in parks that need visitation, as opposed to parks that are really heavily visited right now? So we were doing early dispersion strategies as part of our sustainability arm back in 2017, 2018, to try to disperse travelers. And we did that through user-generated content strategies with CrowdRiff. So it just allowed me, like I said, to step away from struggling to find content and really leading into like, how can content serve our purpose, serve our businesses, and serve all of our stakeholders. So that was a really fun introduction to content strategy for me, beyond what I had been working on in the past. And then I'd say probably about mid-pandemic or so, we were introduced to a new provincial dam system, and this was incredible. So Destination British Columbia has a program that they call the Content Commonwealth. And this is a program where tourism stakeholders are supported through different systems that facilitate access to digital assets. So that can look like CrowdRiff. It can also look like a front-facing portal for content from tourism stakeholders in particular. So we started this dam migration, which if any of you have done a migration, you know how challenging this is. And I'll just tell you a little bit about sort of what we ran into. So I called it the hard drive graveyard. We had this stack of hard drives that sat on my desk that had decades and decades of content. And at that point, I was also buying all the tech for the team. So I had switched our laptops, and we didn't have ports that would, you know, like the right USB ports to hook up into the hard drive. So we had to buy dongles. It was a whole adventure. But as we moved off of hard drive graveyard and into the dam, we faced some challenges, which I've heard every single person on this call already mention. And so I think it's really, you know, it's always reassuring to hear that it's a universal woe when we do this work. Of course, third-party rights was a huge part of our work. We always sourced for our owned imagery with rights that allowed tourism stakeholders to use our images. So so long as it was for visitation, the hotel could use it, the restaurant could use it. And of course, that required a lot of negotiations with photographers. We often saw that photographers would give us kind of a limited usage, like you could have rights for 2 years versus in perpetuity. That all needed to be managed within the dam system. Of course, we had editorial only assets, and that also had to be managed. And then we had, you know, the stack of model and property releases. So we required releases for artwork, for models, anything that was featured, and all of that had to work together. But it also had to work together in a like common language and system across the province. So we were so grateful to have supports through the provincial body, because they gave us a dedicated human to help us work through everything. And then we had to do all the uploading and kind of tying assets together. But it gave us a really great sense of what assets we had available within our, our bank of imagery, where we had gaps, where we wanted to plan our content shoots for the following year. And then, of course, we had a lot of overheating computers. So always a challenge is when the tech just simply doesn't want to keep up with the upload speeds. But it was, I just remember having a phone call with a colleague who was doing the same migration. And he told me he sets up his computers, right? He lived in the northern part of the country. He said, I just set it up near the window when it's cold outside, and that does the trick. So that was his solution to overheating computers. And then the journey kind of shifted for me. 2 years ago today, actually, I joined the CrowdRiff team. So I moved out of the DMO space and joined CrowdRiff to support their marketing team. And in particular, my team does a lot of work in building resources, webinars, a whole conference that provides resourcing for destination marketers. So really our main focus is always how can we support the social media manager, the marketing manager that is doing work with DAM or doing work with user-generated content, and deliver them kind of the latest and greatest so that they stay on top of the trends. And really what we see across our customers, whether they're using our user-generated content platform, they're using just the DAM component, or they're using our creator content services, the common challenge that I see every single day is there's simply never enough content. There's always a gap, especially for DMOs that are, maybe covering a regional area, and there are just not enough hours in the day to leave the office and consistently capture content. So we see that through and through, no matter the size of the DMO. Of course, everyone manages it differently, whether that's from DMO to DMO or within a DMO as well. So we see interesting solutions that people use for rights management. We see different ways of sorting and organizing their content. And so I think seeing Julian's framework was so interesting because they found something that really worked for them. And I think that's where a lot of DMOs struggle, is how do you actually sort of collect and curate something that makes sense across a whole range of stakeholders. And then I'm sure everyone on this call feels the last challenge, which is simply having enough time to do it all and enough kind of brain energy to sink into the technical considerations of that. So I'll tell you a little bit about CrowdRiff and what we do. As I've mentioned, we're a visual content marketing platform. Our real sort of like bread and butter platform that you know us for or might know us for is user-generated content. We work with over 900 destinations around the world and help them source that travel content. And then we have a new product that we launched last year. It's called CrowdRiff Creators. And that's more of a one-to-one pairing of destinations to content creators, so they can start to build up that content library and fill those specific gaps through creators. And we're working with about 50 DMOs on that one. It's been really fun to see the kind of connection of these local content creators and the DMOs and the ways that they're celebrating a destination together. So if anybody's curious, they can drop me a note about that. But I'll tell you a little bit about how the user-generated content platform works. So high level, we pull in social photos and videos from across the internet, primarily Instagram, X, not so much anymore, and Facebook a little bit, you can also pull in, but these social assets that are actively being posted from a destination through different trackers. We also pull in any owned or stocked content that a destination might have, so they can easily use us as a DAM system, in addition to using us for sourcing UGC. We have lots of destinations that do that. And then we have other ways like our collector feature, which allows travelers to upload directly into the platform to share things. For example, I did a really fun dog-friendly itinerary once and asked for people to send in their dog photos of them traveling with their dogs on the island. And if you like dogs, you know how dog people are. I got a lot of content. And I just had a chuckle at Julian's photo of the corgi. That was really perfect. So we pull all of those visuals in, and then we allow destinations to source and handle the rights management to that user-generated content, as well as facilitating ways that they can then deploy it in their website or their digital display in their visitor center, as well as through print and directly to travel media. So we kind of sit in the middle as a solution for a lot of different tourism stakeholders, and we're really grateful to get to do that work. like I said, we're purpose built for travel and tourism. So we really focus specifically in that niche. That's who we work with. These are our people. And we really love working in this space. There's a little bit more in here about some of the work that we do. And one thing I'll maybe just specifically call out is we are fortunate to have some really incredible AI powered keywording behind our visuals, which makes it much simpler to handle some of the metadata that comes through and to do some of that search functionality that a lot of people are looking for, whether that's on the front end or the back end for Media Hub, for example. And then we do have lots of great ways to manage rights within the platform as well between partners. So the DMO that I was at, we had a great partner UGC system so that I could see as a regional DMO what was happening in a community near me or even further away from me that I wasn't able to go and collect content from on a regular basis. And that was a really cool way for me to understand when a new business opened or something was kind of trending, a new hiking trail, for example. So it was really interesting to see that partner connected collaboration that allowed us to share visual assets as a way of sharing what was like happening on the ground within our destination. Now, David asked me if I had a magic wand, things I would do differently. So I'll just end on this note. You're probably going to laugh at this because, Julian and Lynette shared these incredible, really forward-thinking workflows. And I have to say, we were such a small DMO with such a limited team that we had a pretty different landscape and not a lot of resources. So if I could go back, honestly, I would ditch any analog hurdle. This is the SEO person in me, but looking to consistently optimize. We collected paper model releases and we had to get models to write down what they looked like so that later we could tie them in to the final assets in the system. It was a nightmare. So obviously, anything like that, I would absolutely look to tools that would support that now. I imagine that AI in particular is going to help with some of this with facial recognition. At that time, we didn't have the luxury of your phone figuring out who you were and your face collecting things into folders. I think what would have been most helpful to me and continues to be helpful is to build more relationships. The content gaps continue to be never ending. I think the more that the stakeholders know what you need, the more they can support through that digital adoption, the better. And the more assets they're willing to provide, the better. And then I would have adopted more widespread UGC. We had fairly strict brand guidelines and I would say quite a buttoned up brand. And I think now if I were to go back, I would push against that quite a bit more and go really into the content creator landscape that we're seeing with authentic content. We used a lot of authentic traveler content in the past, but it had to meet so many parameters. And honestly, I think I would ditch it and go quite a bit more into sort of the trending landscapes that we're seeing now on social. So those would be my three tips if I were to go back to former Hannah at that time and help out. So it's a joy to talk about it, and thanks for having me.
Hannah, you bet. And thank you, Time Traveler. Much appreciated. And thank you for helping to round out the perspective. And I'm so appreciative of your journey from an adventuresome user to an adventuresome helper-outer from a technology and an enable point of view. If I could ask our presenters to come back on camera as we say good afternoon, good evening, or good morning to our colleagues, depending on where everyone's calling in from. I'd like to thank each of you for your time, and I'm going to take advantage of the time to ask you a flashcard question because we are nearing that 1:30 time when the hands meet the time to say good day to everyone. So here's my flashcard question. Lynette, how would you advise people keep up with the profession of digital asset management? Flashcard, got to go fast.
Personal connections. I feel personal connections with industry leaders like yourself, David, and Reem, connecting with those platforms that give you opportunities to embed yourself into the DAM world, and just taking any opportunities where you can learn from those that are already in the field.
Great. Thanks for that. Andrew, you've had a chance to look across a lot of operations. Have you seen any pattern in where where digital transformation subset, digital asset management, should report with best efficiency in an organization?
Where should it report? That's fascinating. I feel like it should be connected directly to sales teams.
I'm liking that idea. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think it's a new innovation. And quickly, Hannah, I was one of those folks who had to create a one pager to justify Instagram back in 2007. So I'm in the club.
Julian, it was great to hear your presentation. And I was wondering, are you starting to get direct contributions from partners, collaborators around the catchment area that you cover with any kind of portal or automated ingest?
Not at this point, but it is something we are actively looking at, is to set up a content portal where they can submit not just assets, but also stories that could potentially be used on a website. I know, Lynette, you've got your submission portal. So I think it's, yeah, strategically identifying who we want to reach out to. And but would
Good
love
luck
to
with
do
that.
something like that.
When we hear from you in May of 2025, we're going to want an update on that. So make notes and take notes. So, Hannah, you've seen a lot of the unfolding of the value, impact, measurement, and meaning of metadata. And I'm certain we could come up with something very clever to give you another job title, which you probably need. As you undertake to help explain the value and ever unfolding meaning of metadata as the sort of the master way, sort of a pivotal way into content and business. Do you see that trend getting, who do you talk to most effectively about that? And what are a key couple of points of persuasion that have been valuable for you?
It's a curious question. I'm not sure, honestly, I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer it, because we had some pretty messy metadata practices. We really didn't have a framework in place to manage things effectively. We got to a point where we trained photographers to provide metadata in and of itself. And so it was, interesting. I think it comes down to potentially just a lot of education and setting frameworks. If I were to go back, then I would do a deeper dive and look to folks like Julian and Lynette on this call, who have experience with like really crafting those frameworks, because we were simply so mired in the day-to-day that we didn't really get the luxury of thinking of metadata beyond, have we hit the requirements for the provincial dam system? Have we told them the location of the chute, and do we have consent for it?
Wow. And what an interesting career opportunity that now you can help to refactor the meta framing for metadata. How's that? I'm putting that on your business card. Reem, could you join me on camera, please, as we say thank you and good day to everyone? And Reem, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to help facilitate this conversation with our leading professionals from around many points of interest overseas and throughout Canada. And Reem, thank you for your leadership in digital asset management.
I want to thank you, David, for moderating this event. Thank you for our speaker. That was really, really interesting to hear it from a different perspective. And I want to thank everyone who joined us today. Please keep your eyes on our social media and our also emails. We still have so many other events happening there. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. Really appreciate it.
Good day, one and all. Stay tuned for more good things from the Lab for Excellence and DAM, from Reem's leadership and in the field of digital asset management. Good day.
Thank you, everyone. Thank
Thanks,
you, everyone.
everyone. Bye.